Good evening. Welcome to the Harris County Board of Commissioners meeting, March 3rd. We're glad that you are here. We will have our invocation, our pledge, and can I ask please that the gentleman would remove their headgear, please? Thank you, sir. And we will ask Brian Williams, our Director of Community Development, to lead us in our invocation.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. Father, we thank you for the blessings of being able to live in this community, in this county, and for the many blessings that you bless us with the safety and the Sheriff's Department, the fire departments, and EMS, 911, all those that take care of us. And Father, for the commissioners and the department heads that do their jobs on a daily basis. Father, we just thank you for just helping us to make the right decisions and following your will, Father. Lord, just pray for those that have been in the tornadoes last night in Nashville, and for all these people who are getting a lot of this rain, Lord, that you would just be with them as well and protect them. Father, again, we just pray that we will do the business that we need to do tonight to honor you. Father, we love you and praise you. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started on our agenda tonight, late this afternoon, I had a phone call from a resident out on Westgate Drive. And he called me because he wanted to single out one of our departments for some accolades. He said that he and his wife had watched all day one of our road department teams out working on the roads. It had been pouring rain all day long, and he made me promise that I would at least make that public tonight, that they really appreciate what the county does, and they really appreciated the roads crew today. The first item on our agenda is the minutes of February the 18th. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion or changes, questions? All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. Appearance of citizens other than Mr. Hartley next. That's the only one. That's the only one. Mr. Charles Hartley is going to speak. The Second Amendment.
I have some packets here for future reference.
Thank you.
Mr. White?
To the next one.
I do not. Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you. And we will have, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll make it to 5 minutes. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Charles Hartley. I live at 1475 Holland Road in Catawba, Georgia. Born in Hamilton, lived here all my life. My family came to Harris County in 1830, so my family's seen a lot of changes. What we're looking for here in the Second Amendment is, as a lot of you know, with the controversies in Virginia, a lot of the counties have declared Second Amendment resolutions. And what we're asking, we're not asking for a Second Amendment resolution. We talked with Sheriff Jolly, had in-depth discussions with him on this. He backs us on this. And there's 2 bills in Atlanta in the House right now. One of them is red flag laws. They're trying to pass red flag laws, which is not covered in the Constitution. It's illegal search and seizure, is what it is. And also banning of semi-automatic firearms, just because. A sanctuary county does not mean that we're a sanctuary city not working with the government, but we are. What we're asking the county to do is confirm that we are a constitutional county with an emphasis on the Second Amendment, and we will respect the Second Amendment. We will not fund the Sheriff's Department to do illegal seizures under the red flag laws, and we will respect the federal Constitution of the United States as it is written. I know I got in touch with, I sent emails to some of you. I didn't get one to you, Mr. Lane, and I apologize for that. But as Harris County being, if we are a constitutional sanctuary county, it would not cost us any federal funds. What that is, that's, you know, as you, when you took your oath of office, you swore to uphold the Constitution, as did the sheriff and his deputies. He showed us the form that his deputies signed when they become employed by the Harris County Sheriff's Department. All we want is to know that a resolution passed by the county commission stating that Harris County is a constitutional sanctuary county. Has no legal binding. It's just what you were saying to the citizens, that we'll uphold the Constitution as it's written. We're not asking you to make law or change law or do anything like that. It's just a vote of confidence to the citizens. What we'd like to do is we can hammer out a resolution in a work session in about 30 minutes. We're not asking for nothing tonight. We're just kind of setting the plate tonight with this information that we passed out. We're not coming here demanding anything. We want to work with the commissioners on this. And we realize that there's 2 commissioners, there's elections coming up, and if we don't get it, we'll come back after the, you know, we'll be back next year, you know. And like I said, we're not trying to force your hand, but we hope that you agree with us that this is the what Harris County represents. If you look at what's happening in Columbus, as opposed to us, it's 2 completely different worlds. None of us want to go to Columbus and live. It's hard enough going to Columbus and working. And getting back out here to the sanctuary. And that's what Harris County is. It's a sanctuary out here. You can leave all the problems of Harris County behind. We've got some petitions out. We've got an online petition. Some people say petitions don't matter, you know, or there's no minimum for names. But it's kind of telling us, giving us some feedback from the citizens that, you know, this is what they want and where they want to go with this. And, you know, as you are elected by your constituents and you represent these people, this is kind of, it's not a personal choice that you're making, it's what your constituents would like to happen. But that's what we, you know, we'll be back on the 17th, and we will present a petition, a resolution at that time. We would like to work it with the commissioners, maybe get with the attorney and make sure everything's legitimate. And like I said, we're not asking for law. We just want a vote of confidence from the commissioners that we represent the citizens and we will back the citizens. And that's what I've got.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Walton? I do have one thing.
Yes, ma'am.
I saw your online petition.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to share with you that it has been our practice in the past, if you plan to present that to the commission,
Yes, ma'am.
that we do not accept the online petitions.
Right.
So you're aware that we need the name
That's and on our petition, on our handwritten,
and signature.
and we also have their district.
Okay.
And we're trying to be as thorough.
So you're aware of that? I
Yes,
just want to
ma'am.
make sure you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And we're not relying on a petition to do this. You know, it's in my opinion, it's common sense. But everybody's got their own opinion, and you know how you feel about this. Georgia has 33 counties that have already accepted this, already some type of sanctuary county with the Constitution or the Second Amendment. 22 other counties, including us, that are it's in the works to either be voted for or voted against. 2 counties in Georgia have rejected it. I think it was Gwinnett and Clark County around Athens. Those 2 have voted it down. Everybody else, and it started in Habersham County in northeast Georgia. So that's where it started, in Georgia. This has been going on since January 20th when we first formed our group in Georgia to do this.
How many are in your local group?
We probably have about, our Facebook page has 200 followers, and it's a week and a half old. And we have 200 followers now. I can't vet as far as, are they citizens of Harris County, or are they not? I'm not going to say. You know, I know there's 1 or 2 that are not. You know, I'll be up front. You know, but we have about 200. We have 200 members on our Facebook page right now, and we started that last Sunday. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Harlan.
Thank you for the time.
Yes, sir.
I didn't get on the list, I didn't know I had to sign it, can I speak?
I'm sorry, you have to sign in before the meeting. Sorry. There's no old business. And there is new business on our agenda, that's Wood PLC. I understand you have a presentation for us on the review and schedule and the goals of the land use ordinance.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thank you. While we're cranking up the projector, it makes a little noise, so we didn't want it interfering with the previous presentation. So I'll introduce while we're getting that cranked up for the audio visual. For anyone who's not aware, the county is in the early stages of the process of updating zoning and land development codes into a unified development code. Doesn't look like that, but it's going to be a celebratory thing when we finish. So. And we do aim to finish it this year, so it will hopefully be a 2020 code by the time we're in the adoption stages. We've made a start at this. There we go. So go on to the next slide if you would. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm going to run through this quickly. This can stretch out longer and go into more detail. If you have questions, once I finish, I'm glad to go back and revisit, but I think everyone would probably be more interested in the expedited version of the presentation this evening, so we will aspire to that. We're going to touch on what is a Unified Development Code, because this is not something that the county has at this point in time. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that. We're going to talk about the process that we're going to go through, that we've started, that will continue the rest of this year. Anna's going to pick up and talk about issues and needs that we've identified to date. That's why we have the word preliminary there. And then we'll wrap up by describing the public involvement process and the schedule for that. So next slide. Big picture, your county planning and zoning process involves policy and it involves ordinances and those two regulations and codes. And those work hand in hand. So on the policy side, very recently worked through the process of developing a comprehensive plan update. That and related county policies serve as the policy basis for what you do with land regulations, land development regulations. So when we use the term land development code, we're talking about the whole basket of ordinances and regulations that the county enforces and manages and maintains to basically result in good quality development, environmental protection, sound infrastructure, all these things. And these two things need to coordinate. As we're moving towards a unified development code, it's basically a structure for making all of these regulations clear, easy to use, logical, straightforward, current, and updated. Next slide. But I did want to mention from the start the comprehensive plan, because that is a policy. The land use plan is the basis that we work from. So what is a Unified Development Code? The image kind of shows it all here. At this point, as has resulted over many years, you've got this collection of different land use codes. Some are here and some are there. There's a zoning piece. There's different pieces for infrastructure and roads and how you do subdivisions and so forth. And it's kind of grown that way over time. And you're no different from the majority of communities where that's the case. There was zoning originally done in 1973 or something, and then this code and that code, and you're addressing needs as you go along, and eventually you've got a stack like that, and Brian here's pulling all his hair out so you can manage it all right. So what we're headed towards is a unified code where everything is organized into a single document, logical process, and easy to find what you're looking for. Next slide. Streamline, consolidate. Now you're talking a lot about the quality of this. There are definitely, when we're getting to what changes are actually going to be made, that's where we're going to get into the issues and needs. But for those of you in the room who have, in one way or another, used the zoning and development codes, you probably experienced that it's not as clearly organized, it's not as logical as it could be. So streamlining and consolidating is a big deal for ease of use, but also for correctness. We are sure, Brian is sure, I think, there are redundancies and inconsistencies and contradictions within the codes that you have due to the way that they have developed over time. So reorganizing them is going to help, and we're going to ferret out all those issues as we go through that process. Updating and modernizing it. State laws, federal laws, technology, all sorts of changes have happened since your original zoning was put in place and since the other codes. So this is really a one big effort to bring everything up to a current standard of technology as well. And then again, coordinating with other planning documents. Next slide. So the steps, this is how it's structured. And how we like to structure these codes is consistent with the process you actually go through if you're a property owner or a developer or a builder developing or accomplishing a project, whether it's a new subdivision or a commercial shopping center or special use anything. There's a logical process that you go through, and it only makes sense for the document to flow with that process. So step one of that normal process concerns land use. What can I do in my property? And in zoning, you know, this is your allowable uses or special uses or conditional uses or whatever. So we address all that first in the code. How do you sort through regulations of what can I do here for zoning? Step two is what are the limitations on how the property can be developed in terms of physical, environmental, infrastructure, etc. So we cover all the different, you have wetlands protection ordinances, you've got a Chattahoochee River corridor protection ordinances, you've got stream bank protection ordinances. You don't have any streams now, they're all raging rivers right now, basically, that I can see. But all these things come into play now that you've decided this is what I can do on this property. Now, what portions of the property can I use and can't I use? Can I grade and not grade and so forth? That's step two. Then you get into other standards once you're moving on down the road and talking about construction. What building standards, parking lot standards, other types of standards do I need to meet? If I'm doing a subdivision, how do the lots have to be laid out? What are the dimensions? And a lot of this is in both of these categories. A lot of this is in the realm of safety. For your EMS and your fire and police, especially fire, access and ability to put out a fire on any structure that's created. Those are factors that goes there. And then finally, what are the procedures for doing all this? How do you apply? How do you appeal if necessary? So that's the general flow of the whole thing, how it pulls together. This is another way of looking at it, and this is our preliminary notion of how the new articles of the document may flow from, again, Article 2, Article 3 is about what can you do with property, then specifics of development, engineering, construction standards. So those, to the extent appropriate, get pulled within the UDC. And then finally, procedures and administration. Next. I'll pause and say this presentation, because I'm going through it quickly, and there's details in here that some might want to look back at. This will be posted to the webpage for this code effort that is currently up and running as part of the county website. So all this will be easily available for you. There's other documents there as well. I think I already covered this, so next. Inconsistencies, I hit on that as well. Again, that's a big thing as we go through reviewing everything and reorganizing everything. We'll eliminate all of the inconsistencies and make the format of the thing easier to manage as you go through the future. This is not the last time the zoning codes will be adjusted in Harris County. These are to an extent, living documents, and they get changed year after year. So we intend that the structure of this will be easier to modify in a way that's more logical in the future. User-friendly. We're not lawyers. We certainly appreciate and work with county attorneys as we do these and other attorneys, but we write in very plain English, and so you will, I think, find some improvements in that respect. We use a lot of tables and graphics, a lot of, particularly when it comes to land uses. Instead of having to go through pages and pages of long lists, you'll see a lot more of that organized in the tables. And usually what most people, when they're coming in to do something on a property, they have a notion of what they want to do. Few people come in, I think, to the planning office and say, hey, I've got 50 acres here, tell me everything I could possibly do with it. Because most of the time, Brian has people coming in and say, I've got 50 acres, I want to do a subdivision. And so there's an initiative. So the way we organize this is consistent with that. You open the document, you have the notion of what you want to do. I want to open the dairy. You go down and see where that use fits within different zoning categories. Very simple, straightforward. Simplified overall. Next. So our process, and I'm going to shift to Anna, we're going to swap places here so she can go through issues. But basically the simplicity of the process we go through, public input, this is where we are right now. So we have a survey that's up, or that will be up very soon, to get general input on what we think about existing codes, about existing development, or about patterns of development in the county. What might be issues that need to be addressed? What are the most important values that the land development codes, UNEDITED code needs to espouse, etc. So you're all going to have not just an opportunity to complete that survey, but I hope all of you will promote it throughout the community, particularly commissioners and planning commission members, and encourage kind of a viral approach, dangerous word these days, but sort of a viral approach to getting that survey out, getting responses. We'll have more meetings, we'll have workshops. This is simply the formal kickoff for the process. We'll be structuring workshops, going to different places in the county, and encouraging more interactive involvement as we go. And then all that's going to lead to clarification of the issues that Anna's going to talk about in a second. At the same time, and following that, is technical analysis, where we take the thing apart and look at it and have discussions with staff. Brian knows who've been dealing with this day in and day out for years, and kind of identify from a technical standpoint, this is what needs to be done, what needs to be fixed. Then we bring back in the issues, we make sure that we've addressed all those, then we're drafting the document and going through the review and adoption process. So that in simplicity is where we're going through the balance of this year. So Anna, if you don't mind talking over preliminary issues and needs.
So the issues and needs that I'm going to discuss tonight are barely scratching the surface, I'm sure, of what we will hear. And just so you know, these were taken from meetings that we had, what we're referring to as the project orientations meetings that we had with elected officials, our steering committee, and staff early on, to just get an idea of what the issues are and might be, what we might be hearing about. So I wanted to present these to you tonight to just get your mind working about what other issues we can add to this list. And we will continue to build this list through the public involvement process. So, and I'm not going to read through every single bullet point. The notes, a synopsis of the meetings that we've had with staff and elected officials so far are posted on our project website, and they give a little bit more detail. But just to give you an idea, one thing we heard was to maintain the rural atmosphere. Obviously, Harris County's needs are going to be different where we live in the city of Atlanta, and even the city of Columbus. So we're well aware of that, and through this process, we will tailor, while cities and counties might have similar issues in their zoning ordinance and development regulations, how to address it will vary from a county setting, a rural county setting, to a city. So we're aware of that, and we will keep that in mind throughout this process. Promote strategic growth. This is also presented in the comp plan. Nodal growth and taking advantage of existing infrastructure, conserving land and avoiding sprawl and inefficient use of land. Accommodating senior housing and different types of housing, that's something that we hear often, and of course we need to be in compliance with the Fair Housing Act. And then regulate new uses, trending uses, wineries, breweries, certain types of special event venues, tiny homes. These are issues that we've heard about. Agritourism is another one, short-term rentals and Airbnb. These are things that and solar farms here, it's good to have regulations and potentially restrictions on these types of uses that we're seeing pop up. In terms of development standards, we're looking at lot standards with regard to the dimensions of a standard, the minimum lot sizes, where a building can be placed on a property and how far back from the property lines that building should be, and then the distance between buildings as well. We've heard about easements and clarifying regulations for structures within the right-of-way and structures within an easement. And then signs, definitely making sure that the signs meet, legally meet the legal requirements, state requirements for signs. Design standards, we talked a little bit about this, but road development, we've heard thinking about requiring curb and gutter, and the ingress, egress, and subdivisions, that ties back to safety. And then looking at reviewing cul-de-sac regulations. And another thing with design standards, which might be on a different slide, is the high quality development at the bottom, the architectural design standards for commercial development and potentially single-family homes, but often we see that with commercial development. We heard about water and sewer utilities and getting into some of the design for those types of infrastructure and making sure that there's enough room in the right-of-way to locate those facilities as well. Process and procedures, so that's how new development is reviewed and approved. So we're going to be looking at the different types of procedures that are presented in the zoning ordinance and regulations to see where we can make the process more efficient, provide more graphics and flow charts to make it easier to understand how that process works, especially for people who've never been through that before, and then evaluate the application requirements that are tied to those different procedures. And then code organization, this just involves, like we've discussed, reorganizing and streamlining the language where it makes sense, and then replacing outdated language, updating definitions. Right now, I think the definitions are repeated over and over in multiple articles, and what happens is you'll have the same word defined in two different ways. So we want to avoid those types of scenarios and get all of the language updated and make sure that we add new language that might be helpful when regulating development. So the public involvement process, probably the most important part of this. So one thing we've done is written a public involvement plan. This is basically a guide that will also be on our webpage. It defines all the different types of opportunities that you will have to provide input, and has a tentative targeted schedule for those meetings. It's about a 3-page document, so to learn more about our process and how you can get involved, that's a good place to start, and I believe that will be on the project webpage. The steering committee, this is our committee that we will basically vet a lot of our initial feedback through and have them do a first review of drafts as those start to be developed. We will also be meeting with focus groups, and this may involve a lot, different types of groups in the population. So you might have landowners, business owners, developers, home builders, representatives from the Board of Health, from the school board, the Chamber of Commerce, staff, elected officials. So meeting with those different types of groups, because they all have different experiences with the zoning code and development regulations. We want to understand what issues each group is experiencing and how we may best address that in Harris County. So technical analysis and issues identification, those are pretty tied together. So technical analysis is when we're evaluating, how can we address the issues that are identified in the public involvement process. So I'm going to quickly go through the different types of meetings. So we're at the kickoff meeting tonight. We will have a series of community workshops where it will not be scheduled during a Board of Commissioners meeting. It will be a separate meeting with separate advertisement. And that will involve a short presentation from us and then more small group discussion, one-on-one discussion, where we can work through targeted issues that are identified through this process. And that will be a series, so that would likely be more than one. And then the big idea meeting, so that's kind of towards the end of our public involvement process before we really dive into the final draft of the plan. We will come with our big ideas back to the Board of Commissioners and present what our major proposed changes are and discuss those and iron out any outstanding issues there. And then that will lead right into drafting the document and preparing it for the final review. So we will have another review meeting, which at this point the document will have been reviewed by the steering committee and staff and elected officials. We will come back for a review meeting where the public will be able to provide final input. And then we will have an open house, which will be a drop-in type of meeting where we would be here, either for a morning or an afternoon or all day, where residents could come drop in at their convenience, look at the draft ordinance, ask questions, and make any, that's really one of the final times to provide comments before we start the adoption hearings, which meet the state standards. So planning commission hearing followed by the final Board of Commissioners hearing for to review and approve the final document. So some of the communication tools that we're using, we've talked a lot about the project webpage. That's on the community development, the Harris County Community Development page. There's a link to our project website. And on this website, we will keep it updated. For example, we're going to add this PowerPoint. We will provide a link to the survey, the community survey. It's a SurveyMonkey is what we use for that. So you can just click the link, take the survey online. We also have hard copies available as well. And then we have a dedicated project email, which is zoningcode@harriscountygeorgia.gov. That is active, and all of this information will be posted on the project website. And that will be an email to send comments or questions to, and we can get back to you there. And definitely for the community survey, and once we start getting the word out for our workshops, we would need help from the council members and community leaders to help email and push the word out about these meetings on an email listserv or Facebook or similar means, so that we can maximize involvement and participation in these meetings, because it's really important that we get as much feedback as we can from the community. We hear all different sides. So I believe
for the survey, that'll go live, and we'll send out an email at the end of this week.
Yep, it's ready to go. So this is our target project schedule, and we say target because typically things shift a little bit, but this is what we're going to aim for, and we will keep an updated version of this schedule. If there are any changes, we will keep it on the project website, so that's our official page where we want to give out information on our project website. So here we have this ending in December of this year, and in terms of public involvement, the next big thing coming up would be the public workshops, which we have taking place at some point between June and July. That doesn't mean May through July. That's our target month. It might shift one way or the other a little bit. We're not going to have public meetings during that entire time, but that's where we've narrowed it to right now, depending on the next couple of months. And then we would refine that, time schedule once we get closer to establishing a date for the series. It'll probably be in a 1 week span. We'll have a couple different meetings in different locations around the county. Focus groups, I mentioned, that's where we're going to be identifying certain groups to give feedback. Those will probably be ongoing and as needed we have it between April and August, just to give an idea. And then during this time, we are looking at the code, analyzing the code, taking any input that we get and synthesizing that with what our knowledge is of how the ordinance is working for Harris County. So that's kind of always going on in the background, our analysis. And then towards the end of the summer, we will start taking what we've heard and what our analysis is and drafting that into the single unified document. Let's see, and the big idea meeting we have in the fall will be the final, fall through December will be the final meetings associated with the project, which would be the review meetings and the open house, and where we're really starting to wrap things up and tie up loose ends there. And then we have the adoption in December. Anything else? Any questions?
Would you like us to go back and expand on any of that?
There's only one thing I'd like to request, that when we begin to schedule these meetings, focus groups, that we bump our proposed times and dates up against our county calendar.
Of course.
Because sometimes we don't always do that and we end up with conflicts.
Right.
So if we could do that, that would be my request.
Absolutely.
Anybody have anything else?
On the survey, can you only take it once, or can you take it more than once? You know, some surveys let you take many times as you want, and some surveys, once you take it, then once you've logged in, so to speak, you don't get to take it again.
I believe it's set up so that each survey is registered to the machine, the IP address, et cetera, that it was taken from. So if you really wanted to influence things and get very creative to do so, you could probably hop around to different people's houses and log onto their computers and do it multiple times, or hop from one place to another in the library. But we're able to, one, we're not going to base any decisions strictly on the survey. It's anecdotal data, as you would say. Technically, it's input that we will review. We ask a series of questions through the survey, and a lot of them have multiple choice answers. But honestly, the one question that we look the most at is an open-ended question asking for input. Sometimes people will write a whole chapter of a book, sometimes just a few words, comments, but we usually get the most insightful input on these surveys in that opportunity just to provide, input. So it's not so much, you could take it more than once if you wanted to. It wouldn't really make a difference to the purpose of it.
Right.
Any others? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the information.
Leo, you can do the participation plan and the survey,
So
the actual survey questions.
I wasn't going to review the actual survey questions.
So in your agenda package, you have
Yes.
the
Yeah.
actual, okay.
Right. So in your agenda package, you have the actual survey. As Anna mentioned, it hasn't gone live yet. So if you have it, we intend for it to go live, what's today, the 3rd, so.
It's ready to go.
It's ready to go. So if you'll, I guess, confirm that there's no additional questions or comments at all about the survey?
I do
or if
have
there are
one
any.
thing, I'm glad you
Okay,
brought it
all right,
up.
good.
On the very last page of the 14, when we list our different neighborhoods.
Sure.
Communities, could we add Mountain Hill to that, please? I know you have Antioch,
Yes.
But most of those folks in my district refer to it as Mountain Hill. I'm not sure they'll go Antioch.
Should we replace Antioch with Mountain Hill or simply add Mountain?
I would just simply add Mountain Hill.
Okay.
And we can always go back and update the survey if we notice something, you know, after it's gone live. We can still edit the survey to make sure that we have everything covered and correct.
But we'll absolutely do that.
Okay, thank you.
I assume all the rest of the community
It looked
descriptions.
okay, the Piney Grove's in my district, some folks know they live in Piney Grove, but Mountain Hill would probably be, that's the one that most folks will recognize.
Right.
But I didn't see the others, I don't think the other commissioners did, but that was the only one I saw. Okay,
And then the public involvement plan is intended to be a guide. We all agree up front, this is how we're gonna proceed through the process. As Anna mentioned, you know, schedules will move one way or another depending on the county calendar, coordinating schedules, other, you know, realistic factors. School calendars play very importantly into scheduling public meetings. We may get down the road and realize there's an issue that requires more discussion, and so, you know, we remain flexible to address those types of things. But we did want to set forth the public involvement plan, the intent, the discussion of how we plan to go about it, so that everyone can have that common understanding starting off.
thank you.
So if any questions about how we intend to go about the public involvement, please let us know. But both of those documents, the survey and the public involvement, will be posted on the website for anyone to review. And that's a key thing throughout this entire process, transparency of information. We wanted to set up a web page, that's the county web page, it's official, it's not something we created, we're providing the content for it, but that's going to remain a part of your web page, your public information for as long as you wanted to. So we'll continue to add information as we go through the process to keep a clear and transparent record of everything that takes place between now and adoption of the code.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is our county manager. So,
Madam Chairman, Board of Commissioners, the next item is surplus county property. With the recent purchase of several new vehicles, the county has surplus vehicles that we need to dispose of due to old age, excessive mileage, and bad conditions. There's 11 pieces of equipment, 9 vehicles and 2 pieces of heavy equipment that we would like to have the board declare surplus and authorize selling of these county assets in accordance with state law, typically on govdeals.com. So basically, staff recommends that the board declare these 11 pieces of equipment as surplus county property and authorize staff to dispose of these per state law, typically govdeals.com.
okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we declare this property surplus.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any questions?
Most of these are older vehicles or pieces of equipment, real old. You got a couple of the sheriff's office that are 5 years of age or so. Are those ones that we have problems with?
They're wrecked.
They're wrecked. Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
And that is why we're having a special call meeting on Thursday to award a bid for new sheriff's cars.
Thank you.
Anything else? We have a motion and a second to approve this surplus property. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, Mr. Dowling, your project update.
Project updates. Number 3, replacement telephone system. Again, we're still preparing bid specs for that very complicated project. That should go out very, very soon. Number 12, the 2020 LMIG road resurfacing program. Again, the board approved bids on previous meetings. and that project should be completed by this June 30 of this year, and that is to repave Hart Road, Watkins Road, and a portion of Hamilton Pleasant Grove Road, and those are resurfacing of county roads. Number 15, repair of 3 county bridges. Design of those bridges are still being conducted by our engineers. Once those designs are completed, we will bid out those projects, those 3 bridges for repairs. Number 21, replacement of 10 scoreboards. The scoreboards came in Monday, and we hope to have them put in as soon as possible. The only thing stopping is inclement weather. So the 10 scoreboards are on the ground, but we don't want to get on the fields with heavy equipment and mess up the fields by installing new scoreboards. Number 25, the new soccer complex pavilion. That is nearing completion. If it will ever quit raining, we will finish that project up. Number 27, roads and trails. Phase 1's been completed, phase 2 and 3 have been also completed, and we're closing out the grant paperwork right now. So phases 1, 2, and 3 are completed, and people are enjoying the use of that paved trail. Unfortunately, we did not get grant funding for phase 4. So phases 1, 2, and 3 are going to be stopped until we receive more grant funding or other money is allocated through the budget process. Number 28, airport consultant. The selection committee has met and has whittled down the 8 responses to 3, and the personal interviews will be on March the 11th on those top 3 firms. And then the board consideration on April 7th. Number 39, the water line upgrade on State Route 315. Again, our pre-construction meeting was held in the middle of January. The materials have been delivered on site, but due to inclement weather, that project has been delayed. Number 41, update the land use codes. You heard the presentation tonight by our consultants Wood. The project is ongoing, and our website will be updated frequently to keep the public abreast of everything that is going on with that. And a community survey should be activated by the end of this week on our website, so citizens can take the community survey and tell us their opinions on this process and what they'd like to see occur. Number 42, Melody Lakes Dam. Our consultants are going to hand deliver to EPD tomorrow the construction plans and have a meeting with them. So that is ongoing. We will comply with the March 3rd deadline, and we have meetings with the 2 property owners next week in order to obtain easements that are required for this project. Number 43, the aerial flyover of the entire county. That has been completed, and a new base map is currently being uploaded to Q Public and the 911 system. So hopefully by the end of the week, a new base map of the entire county will be uploaded to Q Public, which is a very popular site to go to find out property information, as well as a 911 system. Number 48, the employee compensation study. That is in full swing. All the employees have completed their lengthy questionnaire, and there have been interview dates and times scheduled to have CVIOG come back to the county, interview selected employees. So that project is ongoing, and it is scheduled to be completed by this June. Number 50 and 51, selling of 24 surplus properties in the Melody Lake subdivision. That is on bid. The bid deadline is March the 10th, and board consideration of selling those 24 parcels will be on March the 17th. Also selling the 3.29 acres of surplus county property on State Route 85 near the Ellerslie Park area. Again, that project is on bid. The bid deadline is March the 23rd, with board consideration on April the 7th. And single-family homes for the month of February were 17, for a total of 137 this fiscal year. I don't think we're gonna make our total of 232 as the last year, but it's gonna be close.
You said 17.
17. We're 4 down from previous year, so. But if the weather will stop, if the rain will stop, if it'll stop raining, maybe we can build some houses. So, that's
If it
the,
stop raining, we can do a lot of things.
we can do a lot more things. Finish the pavilion. Yeah, we might have to build an ark pretty soon. So that's the report. Any questions the board may have, be happy to entertain.
I saw the flyers for the flying event. They turned out really nice. They look good. So we're ready to start putting those out and.
Already have. They're being distributed right now to everybody, anybody that will take them. It'll be posted on our website very soon. So hopefully they'll be seen in the community as much as we can until May 9th.
Anything else? Any commissioners have anything else for the board? Mr. County Attorney, you
No,
don't?
ma'am, I do not.
Is there a need for executive session?
I do not know of one.
Okay, and we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, it's a motion, is there a second?
I'll say.
Motion is second, all those in favor?